How you doing, everybody? Listen, I hope you're all well. It's Sunday, May the 1st, 2011, and it's coming up to 9 o'clock in the evening, and I'm making this little video as a sort of a kind of riposte to someone, kind of like a response. And it's one of the last people who made a comment on the last video I made. It's a very straightforward question he asked, but it's kind of connected up with today and with a lot of other more complex issues. But the question is a really simple one, and the question was, what do you think will bring about the societal collapse that I'm talking about? What do you think is going to... Now, first of all, before I comment on this, I just want to say something. I'm not a guru. I'm not making any projections or predictions about what the future holds. I'm simply giving my halfpenny's worth for what it's worth. And sometimes it's not worth very much, but I'm just throwing it out there. And before I give the actual answer, I just want to touch on something. When I was away, I had lots of time to think about things, and one of the things I was thinking about was about wealth creation. And I just want to say that there's only one way, sorry, two ways really, but one real way that wealth, human wealth, wealth that we can use, can be created. And that is through human labour. Now, it can be physical labour, or it can be intellectual labour, or it can be a combination of both. But there's no other way that I know. Maybe other people can tell me there is, but if you start talking about robots or anything like that, I'll just disregard what you're saying. Alright? At the present moment, there's no other way that I know of generating real wealth that is of advantage to human beings other than through human labour. That's the first thing I want to say. Second thing I want to say is that an extraordinary thing has happened in the 21st century. That people constantly talk about capital all the time, but nobody talks about labour. And what has happened in the relationship between capital and labour is that capital has become the dominant relationship between the two, whereas in fact both should be equal, or in the reality of it, labour should dominate capital. That's all I want to say about that. Now, the reason I was thinking about all this was, I was thinking about what is actually going on in the big world picture, and about what is happening to the predominant imperial power in the world, America. And what brought this about was just witnessing the whole crazy movements of the dollar on the international markets, and the value of it, and how essentially it's, whether or not it's by, I believe it's by design. I personally believe it's by design, but other people would argue that it's not by design. It's just happening because of the whole interplay in world economic matters. What's happening is the value of the dollar is going down, down, down. The value of the dollar measured against, on a daily basis, against a basket of currencies. I don't know what they are, but they're obviously the main currencies in the world. The likes of the Canadian dollar, the euro, the yen, probably the Russian ruble, all that sort of stuff. It's going down. And why that's happening. And the way I see it is as follows. Western capital has entered into a kind of an extraordinary dance. That's the only way I can describe it. It's an extraordinary relationship with a massive labour market in China. And the reason it's done that is very, very simple. If you go to the CIA World Factbook, I'll put a link up to it there, you can check out these facts and figures. The average industrial wage in the United States of America for a blue collar guy and working, say, in a manufacturing business in America, the average industrial wage is around about between $45,000 and $50,000 per annum. All right. Now, so you're a capitalist, and you have a load of people, say 1,000 people working for you in the United States of America. Every year you have got to pay, your wage bill is going to be 1,000 times 50,000. That's 50 million. Okay, so that's your wage bill. Imagine if I was able to tell you that you could reduce that to 7 million simply by moving your operation to China. Okay, and that's what's been happening over the last 10, 15, 20 years. There's been a huge move, a flight of capital, industrial capital, out of America into China, where you have this vast pool of virtual slave labour. Now you must remember what goes on in China. There's no unions. There's nobody has their labour rights guaranteed under anything. They're nothing. If you're in a factory, you don't like what's going on, and you try and organise other workers against the management in that factory, what would happen is you'd all be taken out and sent to gulags. Or you might just vanish. You might just... There's no... Like, I mean, we're talking about a total and utter totalitarian system run by oligarchs at the top. Now, you don't hear about them. No, they're not like the Russian oligarchs that are running around the world in big yachts and throwing money and drinking vodka. And, do you know what I mean? You don't. They don't behave like that, these Chinese. But they're exactly the same. Exactly the same. Now, so what you have is you have this huge pool of labour, virtual slave labour. As far as Western capital is concerned, it's slave labour. Because they're never going to have any problems with them, as I say. If they're forced to reduce the wage level, the wage structure, so be it. If they're forced to increase it, what does it matter if they increase it? They're getting it at a seventh of what it costs in the United States. And this is an uneasy dance between Western capital, who are all down there and have huge blocks of industrial power down there in many ways. They don't quite, you see. The Chinese don't let them. The Chinese only let them exploit the labour of the people, because they don't give a shit about their people down there, these Chinese. But that's another day's work. So what you have is you have Western capital down there exploiting the people, because it's in the interests of the Chinese, believe it's in their interest to let this happen, to build up their economy. Alright, so you have this kind of yin and yang going on between American capital and Chinese labour. And this is the big dominant power play, the economic power play in the world today. There's no other power play at work. We're talking about nearly 1 billion people. We're talking about, I think the workforce is something like just short of 900 million people. And you have money from all over the Western world down there exploiting those people and churning this stuff out. Cars, cameras, whatever you name it. All the finished products of the world getting sold all over the world. And also in China itself. Because that's what the Chinese are trying to do. The Chinese are trying to build up their own infrastructure. Their own economic infrastructure. Anyway. It's an extraordinary dance, because these are totally and utterly opposites in ideological position. One wants to exploit the other as much as possible, the Western capital, and the other is being exploited as much as possible, if you know what I mean. And that is a huge dichotomy. And that is the thing that I believe will cause the societal collapse that we're going to bring. Because it has to be something colossal. It's not going to be something like Ireland, or people talk about Spain, and it's all balls. That may cause an internal flummox in, let's say, Europe. And that'll be all patched out. A big patch will sort that out. Please believe me. Ireland and Portugal and even Spain or Greece, not only small, it's only Mickey Mouse stuff. You need a massive interface between two huge countries, and you need massive amounts of capital to go wrong, and then the S will hit the fan big time. And I think that that will happen. That's my interpretation. Because what you have is, you're supposed to have a communist country, but in reality it's an uber ultra capitalist country, totally exploiting its people in the interests of multinational countries, or companies, sorry. And that's not sustainable. That can't last. And while that is all going on, you have internally in all that whole milieu, you've got two sets of governments. You've got the American government trying to force down the value of its currency, because the Chinese government holds between 2.5 and $3 trillion worth of US government bonds, which are owned by the American people. Okay, and the only way they can deal with this whole imbalance is to force the value of the currency down. And if they can force the value of the currency down sufficiently, it does a whole load of things. It means China won't have the power and the influence that it has over America at the moment. And it also means that American exports, it's able to build up its own export base with what it has, because it is still the biggest industrial power in the world. We might like to think that China is the new kid on the block, and within probably 5 to 10, 15 years, it will overtake America. But at the moment, it's still approximately a half of the industrial output of America. America still produces between 14 and 15 trillion dollars US dollars a year. So what I'm saying is that there's this yin and yang constantly going on, this whole trauma going on between these two countries. Now, I think that will play a major role in whatever societal collapse will occur. The other thing is, at a political level, American hegemony is destined to try and make some sort of an attempt on Iran. I've been saying this for years. I've been saying it for 4 years. It hasn't happened, but I still think that is their immediate objective with all this goings on in North Africa and in the Mediterranean basin. I still think that is what is really the power play is all about. They want Iran. And I think that it's the second big thing that could cause a societal collapse, because I think out of it could come a major world conflict if they do make a serious attempt on Iran. I'll nearly bet 100% Russia's not going to stand by and let that happen. And probably China won't either. But certainly Russia is not going to let a country which almost borders on it to be attacked by America or by Israel and stand by and do nothing. They'd be very, very foolish to do that. It'd be a total sign of weakness if they did that. They couldn't do that. Couldn't do that. So I think that's the second, political. One is the economic thing, the thing between America and China. And I think the political thing is the thing between America and Russia via Iran. I think those two things. Because what we're witnessing, and whether we like it or we don't, we're witnessing, this is world power play we're witnessing going on in the world today. America is running around the world like a lunatic. Like, just in a bizarre manner. And there's no question, this is gonna go somewhere very, very fast. It's conducting at least 4 wars. It's conducting a war in Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and now Libya, effectively Libya. I mean, this is unbelievable stuff going on. A lot of people are very, very bland about it. Now, so I want to finish that, and then I want to talk about the Black Swan things nobody has any control over. This Fukushima thing could play out to be a disaster. At the moment we don't know what's going on because it's all speculation. Nobody knows what's happening. All we know is that a load of reactors have either melted down or are on the point of melting down, and from what people who are on the inside and people who studied this nuclear, who are not afraid to speak out, they all tell us this is terrifying stuff. This puts Chernobyl in the happy place. And we must remember what Chernobyl was. Chernobyl was, the nearest city to Chernobyl was 550 kilometres away, which was Kiev. It had a town near it which had 80,000 people in it, and they had to evacuate the town. But it was in the middle of nowhere, this Chernobyl. This Fukushima is not in the middle of nowhere. This Fukushima is on an island with approximately 50 million people, I think, are on this island. Tokyo's only down the road. That's, I don't know how many people are in Tokyo, 12, 15, 16 million people. I mean, this whole thing's bizarre. And we can't find out what's going on. So obviously something very ill, very bad, full of foreboding is going on there. Because otherwise it would all be in the domain, it's all sorted out, how, and you'd be seeing PR people all walking. It's not. This is bad stuff. So an event like that could accelerate, and because adjacent to Japan you have extraordinary, you've got China, you've got Korea, you've got all sorts of people who have massive military power and are certainly not going to stand by and let a country like Japan cause, you know, major, like, have a major input, health input to their own countries. They're not going to tolerate that for 1 minute. So you could have an event like that, if it hasn't already happened with this Fukushima thing. You could have an event like that none of us have any control over, and it could be the third type of thing. Anyway, that's my Hippie's worth. I'm just throwing it out. As I say, at the end of the day, it's all about labour. It's all about the relationship between capital and labour. It's always been that. That struggle has always gone on from the day men stood up and became Homo sapiens. There's always been somebody who's tried to exploit the situation, either through food or through derivatives such as money or the ultra derivative paper money. And we have that today with America, the big world power, the hegemony, the total imperial power in the world. And one way or another, it doesn't matter. The whole situation does not look good, either for labour or, I'm talking about world labour. America does look like she's in some sort of an advanced state of industrial, I wouldn't call it collapse, but certainly recession, major recession. And we mustn't forget that in the 1920s, this did happen before in the 1920s in America, and people were starving on the streets. I remember reading a book, I forget the name of it, what it was, when I was a boy, about people starving on the streets of Chicago. So let's be under no illusion. You know, people, we tend to live in a closeted type of society. It's not like that. Society's not like that. The bottom line of it, society can change very, very quickly from what we view as a normal type of society. You must remember, our whole existence is totally precarious. We're flying around a star on a mud ball in the middle of nowhere. That's our reality. That's our real reality. All this other stuff that I'm talking about is kind of like a day-to-day reality. But the total reality is, it's not thinkable about. If you thought about it too much, you'd go and top yourself. You'd go and run into you'd go and run into the tide or jump into a river. But that's our reality. You know, we pretend that we have this security, this sort of, no, nothing. We've only been here for a minutiae in the whole history of the world. We're only here, we're only recent visitors to the whole thing. Our existence could be snuffed out tomorrow. So I don't want to go down that route. All I want to talk about is, I just want to talk about labour. I want to talk about the men and the women whose labour has built this world. That they're the ones that we celebrate today. They're the ones I'm going to go down when I leave you. I'm going to have a glass of whiskey to celebrate. I don't celebrate capital. Capital, in reality, is an illusion. It's all an illusion. The creators of real wealth in this world are the men, women, and children. And children, let's not forget the children, who've dedicated their lives in the most in an abominable manner, many of them, to bring about change, and we just accept it as normal.